All right, so look, this is how things are gonna go, right? So, a week or two before the season starts, typically I like to make a build guide of the build that I'm thinking about using, and so in this case, I'm gonna pick my what I think were my four strongest builds for the season, and I retuned all of them for this Abattoir of Zero event, and I'll let the video explain what this event is, so that way you can see why I tuned it, and then we'll go through the build, discuss the changes, and then I'll show a little bit of gameplay. I made sure that each of the builds could comfortably farm tiers 90 to tier 100, right? With minimal deaths. You know, if I died, it probably was to something stupid, but that's one thing. But dying to like just not being tanky enough, that's another thing. So if I died to something stupid, I didn't count that. But if I died because I wasn't tanky, then I just kept retuning the build, right? And so yeah, so I'll make a build guide for each of the four builds that I'll be using, just in case anyone's interested. And yeah, so let's go ahead and start the video.
The Abattoir of Zir is an endgame pinnacle dungeon event built into Diablo 4. They're meant to be really challenging for the player. The way it works is it's a complete race against the clock. You jump in, kill as many demons as you can, fill up that progress bar. Once complete, a boss will spawn, kill the boss, do this all before the timer runs out. You will not be able to enter until you complete all 7 tiers of your season journey event. But once this task is finished, go ahead and head over to the Occultist. A new recipe will be available for a Blood Forged Sigil. So you're gonna wanna go ahead and craft one, use it, consume it. Once consumed, a portal will open up in Ked Bardu. It's a big blood portal. You'll be fine, just go in there. Don't worry about it. By completing the Abattoir of Zir dungeon, you will now earn a brand new Tears of Blood glyph. This incredibly strong item boosts rare nodes within its range, but different to Nightmare Dungeons, it has a cap 10 times bigger than normal sigils. So I'm curious just how high players can get it to this season. You will also get a recipe to craft a Blood Forged Sigil, 1 tier higher than what you just completed at the Occultist. Question time, Alex. What's the highest level I can get a Blood Forged Sigil to?
So the Sigil and Dungeon both go up to tier 25, but this covers a much wider difficulty range than you might be used to, from 25 tiers of something like a Nightmare Dungeon. By condensing this large difficulty curve down to only 25 tiers, we want to make sure that each tier feels like a meaningful goal that you can strive for on its own.
That's awesome. When can we expect to play it?
The Abattoir of Zir goes live on December 5th, 2023.
All right, and so on the helmet, we're going with the disobedience aspect. We want cooldown reduction, max life, total armor, and intelligence. That intelligence spot you can flex. You can get lucky hit chance with the barrier, or you can get lifelong kill, whichever one you can get. The chest piece, we're going Raymond in the Infinite. What this does is whenever we use teleport, it groups enemies together and it stuns them. And we do increased damage to enemies that are stunned. So that's really nice, and that's going to help us clear things a lot faster. Then we're using accelerating aspect on the gloves. We want crit chance, attack speed, lucky hit chance, and ranks to chain lightning. For the pants, we're going to Bolt's Will. This is to help us with a resource, and it also gives us a damage increase. For Flicker Step, I use Flicker Step because I like being able to have my ultimate up the entire time. You can go with Esu's Heirloom if you want, and if you if you don't have Esu's Heirloom and you don't have Flicker Step, then I recommend going Ghost Walkers and going movement speed, mana cost reduction, and then you can go intelligence all stats, or you can get ranks to one of these defensive skills like teleport, flame shield, something along those lines. But for me, I like Flicker Step, and I'll explain how to utilize it without getting in trouble, because the higher tier dungeons, you would think that this would probably get you killed, but there's a way to finesse it. For the wand, we're going with the aspect of control. You want all stats, intelligence, core skill damage, and critical strike damage. What the aspect of control does, we deal increased damage to enemies that are mobilized, stunned, or frozen. On the amulet, you're going to want movement speed, total armor, mana cost reduction, and 3 ranks at Devouring Blaze. And the aspect you're going to want is the Storm Swell aspect. This makes it so that we deal increased damage to vulnerable enemies while we have a barrier, and we always have a barrier up. And in the Paragon board, we have a legendary node that makes it that so we can apply vulnerable pretty easily. On the ring, you're going to want the recharging aspect. And the perks you're going to want are max life, resource generation, cold damage, and crit strike chance. The reason why you want cold damage is because on the Paragon board, there is a node on the Frigid Fate board that makes it so that we deal increased damage to our total amount of our bonus damage with cold. And the max is 30%, and we're at 27 because we picked that cold damage here. On the ring, you're going to want Taurashas, and what this does is for each different elemental damage we deal, we get 15% increased damage. And so with this build, we have all three that you can get on the Sorcerer. And on the totem here, you're going to want cooldown reduction, crit strike chance, lucky hit chance, and mana cost reduction. And the aspect we're going with is the conceited aspect. We deal 25 times increased damage while we have a barrier. Okay, now before I go into the skills, I want to talk about how you can kind of flex this build a little bit, right? So I have tried out the Godslayer's Crown, and you melt things with the Godslayer's Crown. The only problem that I have is that you lose all this total armor. And so for me, it kind of didn't seem worth it. But I will say this: if you don't have Tibalt's Will, or you don't like Tibalt's Will, and let's say you have Godslayer's Crown, this is a combo that I use, and it's actually really good. You're gonna go Godslayer's Crown, Raiment of the Infinite, and instead of Tibalt's Will, you're gonna go Temerity. Temerity on this build is insane, and the reason why I say that is the way Temerity works is any effect that heals you beyond 100% life grants you a barrier up to 80% of your maximum life that lasts for 8 seconds. And potions can be used while at full life. So that adds to the barrier. Now, the reason why I say this is insane is because this build is sitting at 16,000 max life. The max life I have is 14,000. And so the way we trigger this permanently is with our vampiric powers. So Undying is how we heal. Every time we cast a skill, it heals us for 3% of our life. And so basically, we just have a permanent barrier up with Temerity. And right now, my barrier is sitting at almost 10,000. It's like 9,000 maybe. And then what's even crazier is whenever you use a defensive skill, let's say like Ice Armor, right? Ice Armor gives you 30% of your base life, and it gives it to you in a barrier. And so anytime I cast Ice Armor while I have Temerity active, I actually have the exact same amount as my max life as a barrier. So I think my max life is like 14.5. And whenever I have both of these active, I actually have a barrier for 14.5. So you basically are doubling your health. So that's like a little flex play you can do because, you know, we have to see how the event actually is. We have to see how challenging it is. If it's like really, really challenging, I might try this combo out. But for now, I've been liking this combo a lot better. Just using a regular helmet and then using Tibalt's Will. But that's just a heads up there. Now we'll go over the skill tree real quick. You're going to go Firebolt, and this is going to be our first enchant. It allows us to do burning damage to enemies, and it also is the way we apply fire damage to take advantage of Taurashas. The next perk we're getting is 1 rank of Frozen Orb. What this does is it allows us to apply chill to enemies, and it also helps us with our freeze. So this actually triggers a lot. It triggers whenever you cast a non-basic skill. It has a 30% chance to launch, and because we have such fast attack speed with Chain Lightning, this actually triggers quite a bit. And on top of that, we also are using Frost Nova, and so that's another way we have to freeze enemies. So it's very, very easy to freeze enemies with this build. Then we're going Chain Lightning, and you want to make sure you pick Destructive Chain Lightning for the crackling energy. We're using Charge Bolt here, and you want to make sure you pick up Destructive Charge Bolts. Now, the reason why we're using Charge Bolts, because as you can see, it's not on the skill bar here. Whenever we cast our ultimate, it makes it so that whenever we cast a Shock skill, a random Core, Conjuration, or Mastery skill is also cast. So what that means is whenever we have our ultimate up, and we have our ultimate up almost permanently, it can cast an extra Chain Lightning, Charge Bolts, Lightning Spear, and Ball Lightning. And so we made sure we slotted points into each of these because we do get the benefits from this. And so the main reason why we're going with Charge Bolts is because whenever an enemy is hit by Charge Bolts, they get their damage reduced by 25%. So this is really nice for survivability purposes. We're going 1 point into Flame Shield. This just makes it so that we're immune. Teleport is what we use to group enemies up. And also it gives us 30% damage reduction. We're going 1 point into Elemental Attunement. This just has a chance to reset our defensive skills, and we actually have 4. So this always triggers one of these. We're going 2 points in, 1 point into Glass Cannon. We don't need to invest the 3 because we're using Raiment of the Infinite. 1 point in Ice Armor, 1 point into Frost Nova. We're going Align the Elements, Mana Shield, Protection. Every time we spend 100 mana, we get 21% damage reduction, and that's very, very easy to do on this build. And then with Protection, whenever we use a cooldown, we get a barrier. So again, if you were to use Temerity, anytime you use a cooldown, not just when you use Ice Armor, but anytime you use a cooldown, you're going to be getting almost the exact same amount of barrier as your health. So again, effectively doubling your health, which is really, really nice. So like I said, it just depends on how you play, and you have to kind of just feel it out. But like I said, Temerity is also a very, very viable option. Then we're going points into Lightning Spear. We're making sure we're picking up Invoked Lightning Spear. This makes it so that whenever we cast our ultimate, Lightning Spears have a chance to stun enemies. And we're also going Conjuration Mastery. Now, the reason why we're going Conjuration Mastery is because when we pop our ultimate, usually there's about 3 to 4 at minimum lightning spears that will be flying around. So we get 12 times increased damage. And it just felt like it was more worth investing 3 points into here instead of having to invest 4 points to get the 9% here. Because essentially we just need to have 3 lightning spears up to get the same amount of damage that we would get from here without having to cast a skill above 50 mana. So it just felt like this was the better option here. Then we're going 1 point into Inner Flames, 3 points into Devouring Blaze. Also on this amulet, if you can't get Devouring Blaze, I would definitely recommend Hoarfrost. Hoarfrost is another good option to go with. Then we're going Ball Lightning, Enhanced Ball Lightning, 1 point into Permafrost, 3 points into Hoarfrost, 3 points into Fiery Surge. This makes it so that whenever we kill a burning enemy, it increases our mana regeneration by 45%. And luckily, because we have Firebolt, everything is burning, and everything we kill is burning. So this is permanently up. So we, for the most part, we really don't have mana issues. Then we're going Unstable Currents, picking up all 3. We're going 1 point into Coursing Currents, 3 points into Electrocution for the damage reduction, and 3 points into Convulsion for the stun. And then lastly, we're going Overflowing Energy. This just makes it so that it reduces the cooldowns on our shock skills, which helps. It helps us with having our ultimate up almost the entire time. And so for the Paragon board, the first glyph we're starting with is Tactician. This makes it so that we deal 10 times increased damage every time we use a defensive skill for 4 seconds. And we have 4 defensive skills, so this is permanently up for the most part. On the next board, we're going Enchantment Master, and we're using Elementalist. Whenever we deal fire, cold, or lightning damage to an enemy, it increases all the damage you deal to them by 5% for 10 seconds. So this has 100% uptime. Now, I'm going to say this. When we get the new glyph from the event, we will be swapping this out and putting the Tears of Blood glyph here. Now, in my other 2 videos, I said that for every 5 core stat, you get that damage increase. And the way I thought it worked was, I thought it was whatever your core stat is for your character. So, for example, for Sorcerer, it'd be Intelligence, but it's actually any of these stats. It's not just Intelligence. So that's actually kind of nutty. And then another thing, I thought that the level cap was 50, but it's actually not 50. 50 just makes it so that it expands the radius. Like how if you were to upgrade these regular glyphs at level 15, it expands the radius. Yeah, to expand the radius for this is actually level 50. This actually goes up all the way to level 200. That's actually the max level. For the third ward, we're going Ceaseless Conduit, and we're going the Destruction glyph. This is just for crit strike damage, and anytime we critically strike an enemy, it increases all the damage they take for you up to 12%. And we're making sure we're grabbing the Ceaseless Conduit legendary node. This makes it so that we have a 20% chance to not consume a Crackling Energy charge, and Crackling Energy's damage is increased by 3% per 20 total intelligence. So the max we can get right now is 141%. The next board we're going is Burning Instincts, and we're going Control. This is for our damage to crowd controlled enemies. We also deal 10 times increased damage to slow or chilled, and we do 20 times increased damage to stun or frozen. And like I said, we stun very, very often. We freeze fairly regularly, but we also have Frost Nova, so we can trigger it whenever we want. And we always chill enemies. It's very, very easy to chill enemies. The next board we're going is Frigid Fate, and we're going charged. We're picking up the Frigid Fate legendary node, like I mentioned before, and we're picking up the charge glyph. And what it does is it gives us a little bit of crackling energy damage. And every time we pick up crackling energy, it grants us a 5% increased damage for 5 seconds up to 15%. So this is really nice because crackling energy is always on the ground. So this has 100% uptime as well. And then the last board, we're going Static Surge, and we're using Exploit. What Exploit does is every time we deal damage to a vulnerable enemy, it increases our damage by 1% up to 10% for 6 seconds. And we're making sure we grab the Static Surge legendary node. Now I want to say with this, it is very, very important that on your amulet and your little totem here that you get mana cost reduction. And the reason being is because however much mana cost reduction you have, this number of after spending X amount of mana will go down or it'll go up. So for example, if I were to take the totem off, I'll just show you real quick. Now we have to spend 76 mana to make it so that Chain Lightning makes enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds and restores 10% of your mana. So the more mana cost reduction you have, the better. I think that's about it. I'll just, oh, nope, Vampiric Powers. So you're going to go Undying for the heals. And like I said, this pairs extremely well with Temerity. It's very, very strong with Temerity. Prey on the Weak, so that way when we make enemies vulnerable, we deal increased damage. We're going Metamorphosis for the Unstoppable, and it also inflicts the Vampiric Curse. And whenever enemies are infected by a Vampiric Curse, they are vulnerable. And this pairs very, very nicely with Flicker Step. Essentially, one of the ways that we can apply vulnerable extremely easily is we use Raiment of the Infinite. We teleport, we group enemies together, we dodge out of the enemies, and when you dodge away from the enemies, it actually does trigger Flicker Step. So we get that 10-second reduced cooldown on our ultimate, and also it will apply the Vampiric Curse over all the enemies. So there's a lot of synergy with all that going on. We have Sanguine Brace for the additional crit chance and for the Fortify, so that way we get the damage reduction. And then we're going Ravenous for the attack speed. And yeah, I mean, that's about it. I'll just show a little bit of gameplay, and yeah, that's about it.
I'm out of mana. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I need time to prepare. ready yet. I need time to prepare that. I'm not ready yet. I need time to prepare. Out of mana. I'm not ready yet.